Right, so we saw the bad parts of society, we saw people trying to fix them. Now we're just going to see how society operates as a whole on their times. What did they read? What did they do? And there's a lot of things that maybe will seem familiar here, hopefully. If it doesn't, shame on you. Read it. So, to these immigrants here, they love to read books by two people, and that'd be Horatio Alger and Mark Twain. Now, Horatio Alger wrote books such as Strive and Succeed, and From Farm Boy to Senator, and Do and Dare. The whole idea is these are called rags to riches. The idea that you can make something of yourself if you just try. Nobody can stop you. There's no bound to the human spirit. And so people love these type of things. And they are a much better read than Twilight or some other useless crap that's come out in the couple. But there you go. All right. Now, the other author we have is Mark Twain. Now, Mark Twain, of course, wrote Huckleberry Finn. He wrote all these things that have become contemporary culture. Now, a lot of people have actually complained about Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer for their use of a word that by our standards is considered bad. But Mark Twain was a realist. And we'll talk about realism here in a minute. That basically means he wrote what he heard. And I know that seems very, very odd, but at that time, that's how it was. And a lot of people have gone and said, well, that needs to be edited and needs to be hijacked out of history. And other people said, hey, that's how it was. We need to not repeat history. And again, I'm not going to make up your mind for you. You can decide on that. Now, Mark Twain gave us an awesome thing here. He gave us what we call this whole period of 1865 until about 1900. He says, sometimes I wonder whether the world is being run by smart people who are putting us on or by imbeciles who really mean it. The term he gave us from a book is called the Gilded Age, and this is the whole packet we've been talking about. And so what is the Gilded Age? Now, in this age, the eBay age, I guess you would call it, or whatever, I could take any one of these desks here in my classroom and I could paint it gold, and I could put it on the internet, and I could get some idiot to buy it. Guarantee you. Now imagine that idiot's surprise when he gets the desk home and it starts to chip off and he realizes it's a real desk. He would be upset, correct? And so that's what Mark Twain in essence means of the Gilded Age. We have all this wealth and everything that looks great, but if we scratch beneath the surface of that wealth, the wealth of the few, there are many, many problems. There's tenement housing, there's crime, there's poverty, political machines, everything is going bad. And so he's basically saying, don't worry, don't focus on what's on the outside, focus on what's on the inside, which you've been told long and long in every little essence. Yet we don't do it. We keep making the same mistake. So, there you go. Now, Mark Twain, as I said a minute ago, is a realist. This is an example of a realist painting. The woman went out, her daughter was playing in the field, daughter was laying down. This is what she painted. There it is. And so a realism is painting or writing in a style of what you see and what you hear. Now, this would not be, good for Game of Thrones writers or anything like that. There's no dragons or anything like that because they don't see them. They paint or they write what they really see. All right? Now, the last author we're going to talk about here, make sure, is Jack London. And Jack London wrote a book called The Call of the Wild, and that's what I want you to get there. He wrote many of them, but Call of the Wild is mainly the big thing. Now, in Call of the Wild, what happens is a young boy comes upon a wolf cub who he raises and helps, and eventually the wild comes out of the wolf, and there's a clash, and the wolf has to go. In other words, you can't stop nature from being nature. And so for this reason, Jack London is what we call a naturalist writer. Naturalism is basically where you portray nature as an untamable beast. And we saw this recently. If you haven't seen this video, you can go pull it up of, what is that guy's name? I just looked at it, seriously. Anyway, there was an Australian man who was surfing, and he came in contact with a shark. And if you haven't seen that video, please go pull it up. He doesn't die. He actually gets away. but it's basically, he's surfing, shark's doing his thing, and they don't kill the shark or anything. Why? Because that's what a shark does. It's going after the board because thought the board was cool. Came to find out it was actually two sharks. But that's just cool because nature cannot be tamed. You can't stop it. And so that's naturalism. All right? Now, all these books that I've talked about here, and of course Jesse James and other things, came out in what is called a dime novel because they cost 5 cents. Think about it for a second. What can you get for 5 cents now? Nothing. Gumballs even cost 25 cents, right? And so this is the idea here. We have dime novels, and this was their oh gosh, what do we call these? Ebooks. This was their iTunes. This was their entertainment, their apps. They would go get a dime novel and read it from Mark Twain or Jack London or Horatio Alger, whoever it was. Now, upon going through this, two men came up with the idea of selling clothing and selling various items for the home by advertising in these dime novels. And they put a catalog together. And these two men, of course, are Sears and Roebuck. And so you have all this stuff that Sears and Roebuck had. Now, this is the same Sears you see that is actually in trouble of going out of business now. And at the time, they were a big catalog, and people would, look at the catalog and order what they want, and it would come to them on the train. This is before the shopping mall, and this is before the internet. So it goes catalog, then it goes shopping mall, and then lastly, we're in the internet age where everybody's going to just sit at home and in their underwear eating Cheerios and buy stuff on eBay, right? Amazon, whatever. But there's the idea, okay? Now, reading, and I said reading. I'll punish myself. I'll take the weekend off. But regardless reading became so popular that how many readers you had reading your newspaper or your book determined how much money you made. And so we have to make reading appealing, do we not? We have to. And so let me give you an example. If there's a wreck, you have two stories. One wreck says, car flips over, everybody fine, police called out. It was an accident, right? Or you have this story. Police called on the scene of a grisly accident, arms and limbs hanging from the tree, the concrete stained with blood, the car in a massive heap of burning rubber. You're going to read the second one because we're all sick people and we like hearing that kind of stuff. Do we not? And so that second is not any different from the first. It's the same story. The only thing is we have exaggerated the truth in order to attract a reader. It's a style that we call yellow journalism. Now, yellow journalism is a exaggerated news style. It was mainly used for newspapers, and it is meant to draw the attention. It actually comes from a cartoon called The Yellow Kid, and there was a competition over who would have the person of the Yellow Kid, and I'll show you a video on that later on. Now, two writers of two warring newspapers, if you will, over readers will actually come up with this. And this is William Randolph Hearst. Here he is. The other man is Joseph Pulitzer. If you're familiar with reading, this would be the same man who the Pulitzer Prize for Best Story is named after. So these two men are actually responsible for yellow journalism and going through these things. Now, there you have Pulitzer Prize, correct? So Hearst and Pulitzer are yellow journalism, and again, that is exaggerated reading. You see this in the tabloids and the Sun. Recently, they put something on CNN from the Sun showing Queen Elizabeth giving the Nazi salute, which was actually called the Bellamy Salute, which we actually did to the American flag until 1942. It's neither here nor there. But there you go, okay? Now, the last thing is, what did people do with their leisure time? Because as we have all these things here, we got to have leisure. They went to amusement parks. This is Coney Island in New York. This is where Sonic got the Coney idea for the hot dog guys. But there was so much stuff. You could go skating, you could do, the loop-de-loop, etc. And maybe amusement parks are dying out. I mean, we have one in Memphis, and it's gone. Liberty Land, it kind of fell into ruins. But still, people aren't drawn to these things, correct? Here's another example of leisure time. They would go to baseball games. And again, this is something maybe taking a hit, but spectator sports, as they were called, it wasn't just baseball, but football. And actually, the third spectator sport is not basketball, it is boxing. Basketball really doesn't become popular until about the 1940s, 50s, in that range, really in the 60s. And so there with that. Now, the last two things is in your own home. There were two products that showed you had money and you liked somebody. If they came into your house, you would offer them a Coca-Cola and you would offer them a Hershey bar. And that is a plain Hershey bar, not Hershey with almonds, cookies and cream, etc. And now we're maybe so spoiled we don't want to have the regular Hershey's, right? Which I just find absurd. And so that's leisure time. How'd you spend your leisure time? Now, last thing I want you to do here, I want you to compare naturalism and realism. We only have one more section in this for Gilded Age, and we will get to that momentarily. All right?